Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second Lore Team AMA for DuskBreakers. I'm Joshi on the marketing team, and with me we have three esteemed members of our Lore team and writers for DuskBreakers at MetaTheory. Let's start off. We'll go one by one and introduce them, the role that they play here, and some of the work they do behind the scenes. Molly, you were here with us in the first session. Let's just remind everyone about what you do here.
Yeah, totally. I'm a pro at saying my name and title now that I've had practice. I'm Molly. I'm the co-head writer here along with Tavius. And I work on both like the world building lore side and also the narrative design side for all of our narratives across like the games, comic, and other media outlets that we can't talk about yet.
Excellent. And Sim, you were also with us in the first session. Thanks again for joining us here tonight. Let's just reintroduce the audience to what you do here at DuskBreakers.
Sure. My name is Summer. I do primarily world building and the science fiction or the science aspects of Dustbreakers. For example, if we want to figure out how the gribbles work, or how you go about constructing a space elevator, that's usually what I work on. Not so much characters or narrative.
Gotcha. So the more hard science explanations of things. And then,
Yeah, and just
go ahead.
kind of the science fiction in general as well, I'm like exploring for example, like different types of weapons, different types of armor and stuff that you typically see in science fiction, and how that fits into the world building.
Excellent. And now, for the first time tonight, we have Tavius. Please do let everyone know your role at MetaTheory and the kind of work you do behind the scenes.
Yes. Hello, I am Tavius. I am a co-head writer with Molly, as Molly spoke of. We have been here since the early days, pre-Dustbreaker days. And I also do audio production and voice work, as well as have voice actors do stuff for our characters, like Sue the Scheduler, that is my wife. And other characters you'll hear are various friends or sometimes myself. And I also do continuity and nerdy pickiness, right? Like I just make sure everything's always at the line. So, yeah.
That's good. I think, the more people doing that, the better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I thought Sue the Scheduler was Bernie this whole time, though. I mean,
Mm.
no?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so that was the
Well,
original pitch, right?
well, Bernie is actually Tavius's wife. That's what we
Oh,
forget.
yeah.
Oh,
That's what nobody knew this whole time, right?
there's the
Yes.
reveal.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
absolutely.
All right. Well, now we know a bit more about who we have speaking tonight. This morning we did also share a video of a new face in the Duskbreakers universe. If we're able to, then Molly can share screen and set up the clip here for us.
Yeah, let me try it out.
I will also attempt. Hang on.
I will
Okay,
not attempt. I will
I
sit here and enjoy.
I think I got it. Uh, Give me one more second.
I think awkward silences is what make art. Yeah, that's why Joshi, you are the tuber and I am not.
Ah, I see a
Does
screen
that work?
appears. Yes, yes, it does.
I did it. All right, now let's sit back, listen, and enjoy. Oop. Or not.
Perhaps.
Uh,
Hello, my fellow
It's working.
truth seekers. This is Rain Skavorsky, and I'm here to expose the lies that Dust Tech wants us to believe. This is the story of how we ended up here, in this dystopia, in this world ruled by the corporations, and it's not what they want you to think. This whole thing started in 2025, the good old days. When we returned to the moon, we were on the brink of creating true AI, and we were on the path to reverse the effects of climate change. But as we all know, the sun had other plans. That same year, a massive burst of plasma erupted from the sun and triggered a geomagnetic storm that destroyed our electric grids, satellites, and gas lines. Every inch of the world was plunged into darkness. And then the pure chaos began. Governments struggled to maintain control, and soon warlords emerged. They controlled the food, water, and fuel, and their power grew as the world fell apart. In 2029, the fighting reached a state of equilibrium as the warlords became quasi-states, each controlling a few fortified cities. They forced their subjects to work for them in exchange for protection. These neo-feudal nations eventually overtook a few remaining pre-birth governments entirely. Energy infrastructure expanded and corporations resurfaced. Oligarchs loyal to those warlords ran most of the corporations, creating monopolies, and by the 2070s, the oligarchs had ousted the old generals turned lords, and the corporate states were born. And just when we thought things couldn't get any worse, the Dusk arrived in 2082. The nations of Africa, the only nations fighting for a sustainable future, were distracted by the Dusk and the salvation we all hoped it would bring. From their allegiance and with the worldwide corporate oligarchs, Dusk Tech was born. But let me tell you, my friends, the Dusk is not what it seems. The ruling elite want us to believe that the crew of the Dusk is dead, that ship is derelict, but how do we know that? What if it's a weapon? What if it's here to watch us like ants in an ant farm? Nobody really knows, but Dusk Tech thinks it do. They assume the most profitable explanation, the one that justifies careless exploitation and the conversion of thousands of regular humans into cybernetic laborers. A space elevator built from the materials pulled from the depths of the Dusk now connects to the very place where humanity was born, spanning a distance of 36,000 kilometers like a giant umbilical cord. With it, Dusk Tech is recklessly stealing technology from an advanced civilization, acting like a child playing with a dangerous weapon. We have abundant resources on Earth that we should be utilizing to save ourselves. It is time for us to step up and be brave and rely on our own capabilities. If we fail to do so, we may bring upon ourselves a disaster that will make the burst pale in comparison. This is Rain Skavorsky signing off from the Shadow Pirate Stream. Keep fighting. Keep dancing.
All right. That was, yeah, that was pretty interesting. That was the first time we've seen Rain Skavorsky, aside from this morning. So clearly he is, Shadow Pirate Stream, Shadow District. Delu is putting pieces together here. Is there anything else we can say about this new Rain person here?
Yeah, so our hope with Rain is, we really want to have a world that, where all these different ideas and factions can exist. And so Rain kind of represents the conspiracy theorist podcast guy who's very anti-corporation, who's trying to really figure out what the truth is behind the Dusk. And Rain was actually Tavius's creation. If Tavius, you want to say a little more about who your inspirations were for Rain, also as someone who voiced him.
Rain's one of my favorites because he's kind of like if Three Dog from Fallout and Art Bell, an old conspiracy radio guy, were merged together, and he just kind of he's deep into the Shadow District. He wants to help with the truth, and he's a guy who's been through some stuff. Let's just say that.
Awesome. So I'm curious, I guess, timeline-wise, I know that he could not have been alive during, the actual burst or the immediate following. So I'm curious now, like, what sort of knowledge base survived for him to draw from and make these, conspiracy theories from, mostly written text, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so let's just say the digital sphere has been cleaned of things that you could find that are deep truths. So yeah, he likes to go analog as much as possible.
Gotcha. So yeah, we've got a little bit of a history lesson, maybe a biased one or one-sided version of it there from Rain.
Yep. It's definitely his opinion. It's definitely his opinion.
But since we have you lovely writers here, Sim, this morning you did a good job giving us kind of an explanation of how bad is the burst really, now that we're, much further along in history and we have the corpo states, as Rain is spouting about. Are they saving humanity? Is there much humanity left to save? What happened in the burst, and what was it like when the dusk got there later on?
Yeah, so this is actually I went down quite the rabbit hole once I saw that solar flare in the timeline. It's like, oh, okay, so is there a solar flare disaster that could do something like that? And I remember learning that there was, so I did some digging and found out there's a thing called a coronal mass ejection. So imagine a bubble of plasma belched out from the sun that's much, much, much larger than the Earth, traveling like over 10,000 kilometers per second. So I mean, it's just a bunch of basically black plasma or gas. Like, you wouldn't think, even if it's really big, it would hurt much. But what happens is, because it's charged, plasma has an electric charge, so it hits the magnetic sphere, or magnetosphere of the Earth, the big magnetic field around the Earth, and it distorts it. Now, I'm not going to try to mangle the physics as far as there's a lot of little details beyond that, but basically, when you move a magnetic field around a conductive object, it can induce a current. That's actually how transformers work, is magnetic induction. So you move an electric field, the magnetic field of the Earth, and distort it severely, and what it can do is induce electric currents in our electric grid, like along power lines. It could overheat transformers and blow them. To give you an idea how severe this could be, in 1859, this actually happened in real life. I mean, we actually hit the Earth, and it created an aurora borealis nearly to the equator, and it was so bright that people could read newspapers in the middle of the night. People are waking up at midnight thinking it was morning. That's how incredibly intense it was, and it actually set telegraph machines on fire. There's actually records of this, and fortunately we didn't have an electric grid then. Fast forward to 2012, and we actually narrowly avoided a disaster potentially like this. A coronal mass ejection, or CME for short, just missed the Earth by, I think, like a week or a few days in 2012. And if that had hit, it could have potentially taken out most of our transformers and ruined our electric grid. So now think about how dependent we are on electricity. We need, think, how long do you think you could live without electricity? For 6 months, a year. So if the electric grid goes down, we lose communication. The economy's potentially gone within after weeks to months. We can't refrigerate food anymore. So it would, if it was a global electric grid collapse, it would undoubtedly destroy civilization as we know it. So, and how many people would die from that? Nobody knows. I mean, I've seen estimates all the way from 90% of the population, which seems a bit extreme, to hundreds of millions. It just depends to millions. It depends on how long the power is down and how severe the damage is. And so it was pretty bad. Total societal collapse, which is why Rain Kavorsky was talking about how warlords came to power, and it took decades before then we had corporations, and those maybe formed oligarchies, and it's almost like we reran things back to the 19th century. So when the dusk arrives, around the time the dusk arrives, civilization has mostly recovered in the sense of that it's got a functioning electric grid, a lot of communication technology is still working, political borders and governments are completely changed. And during this time, all the progress we're making as of today on like dealing with climate change, international cooperation, supply chains that, for example, are important for the environment, like keeping wind power and solar voltaics cheap. All that's gone. So all that was destroyed in the burst. So all that progress we were making on like working towards a better future, avoiding a worst case climate change scenario, developing fusion power, desalination, all that progress gone. Was because of just everything fell apart. So we're in a pretty rough shape by the time the dusk arrives. And it's getting better, but because of all these mounting problems with sustainability, climate, food and water, humanity's on the brink of another collapse by 2100, possibly a permanent one. So we kind of recovered from the burst, but not fully, and it's almost like we're on borrowed time. But,
gotcha. So
I think that's everything.
yeah. So the gist is, one big cosmic event, essentially. Even though humanity is kind of hurtling toward an extinction event anyway, this was a big solar flare that could happen anytime, honestly. And we've just kind of built ourselves into a corner with our electronic grid and everything. So passage of time, resources get collected, we get these corpo governments to add some structure to the world, and now the dusk basically is full of goodies, as Dusk Tech sees it supposedly, and begins morphing regular surviving humans into these breakers that can safely explore the dusk. So now that the dusk is here, we've got to construct an elevator. We've got to actually figure out how to get people aboard. So I think, Molly, earlier today we mentioned Dr. Lindaway and some of the first DuskBreakers. So who were these people that saw a giant floating balloon full of goodies and said, we'll go take a look first?
Yes, they saw it as a piñata and ran up to burst it. Yeah, I'm happy to give kind of an overview on it, and then Tavius, if you want to add anything, feel free to. So we positioned Dr. Ayenda Lindaway as kind of our hero character, who is the first one to discover the Duskite orb, which is the entranceway into the dusk, and because she her eyes glowed when the dusk arrived, she's just like has this physical connection with it. She realizes that she's able to pass through the orb, and morphs into a cybernetic being. She kind of figures out, oh, this is the way we get into the ship. I need to find more people like me. And so she assembles a special team, both of people she knows and people who are thrust upon her by the corporate governments that are funding her trips to the dusk at this time, which is before the space elevator even existed. So they're having to go up by rocket. So she recruits Makono, who is her childhood friend, and both Lindaway and Makono are from around the general area of what used to be the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is where which is where the Dusk is stationed itself, above the birthplace of humanity, as Rain Skavorsky said. And so Makono is kind of like a tank type. He's a giant friendly teddy bear who is very like optimistic and ready to save the world. And he brings along his husband, who is a more quiet, contemplative, philosophical scientist type. His name is Moyo. And then the the government officials find them a more kind of like stealth fighting combat expert named Vix, who is a young woman that is kind of taken under Linda Way's wing. And rounding off the crew, we have the very flavorful character of Tundle Fisher, who's this kind of like shady older white dude, but who does end up being able to pass through the Duskite Orb and become a breaker. So yeah, it's this ragtag team of five. Tundle is the best. Who are for the first few years like going up inside the ship on this rocket. Soon they figure out more about what this material is and figure out how to build the space elevator. Tundle Fisher famously, when he has his first death and resurrection experience on the Dusk, sees that as a religious experience and takes that and starts the Believers of the Broken cult. So, as the years go on, the
Tundle
Alpha.
would not say they're a cult. I don't think he thinks it's not a cult. It's just a way of belief, right?
Yes, it's just
It's just
it's just correct.
yeah,
It's just called
absolutely.
being correct.
Yeah, it's called the right way to think. That's
Yes.
yes.
It's just called having the correct religion that also makes you
Absolutely.
money.
Absolutely.
Um, so yes, he discovers the true God, and yeah, so that's as the years progressed. It's like a decade to 15 years in when our story starts, when we reach the first like 10K of recruited breakers, and then by this time the alpha team has kind of all separated. Vix is still doing stuff for Tundle and more doing like stealth missions. Moyo and Makono have retired and opened a tea and bar restaurant called Double M's. Tundle's not called Accurate Religion is thriving, and Linda Way has become kind of like separate and more mysterious, more kept to her own, doing her own research, but no one quite knows what's going on with her. So that is the full timeline of the Alpha team for you, Joshi.
Great. What are some inspirations for those characters?
Yeah, that's a good question. I kind of think of Makono as like, who is the dad in the Jordan Peele movie Us, Tavius?
Oh yeah. Um, well,
I don't know the actor, but that character, just like the
Yep.
dad of the group, like the
yeah.
funny, kind teddy bear, big, muscly dad who's also there to protect you.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we were, yeah,
Winston,
you're
yes,
correct.
thank
You're
you,
correct.
DW.
Yeah, Winston Duke. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, when we were first coming out with these, we were kind of thinking about archetypes, right? We were thinking about 5 different sort of archetypes of personalities, and what's a good energy for that. So we kind of landed on 5 similar types. So you kind of have like the fighter, the tank, the technician, those sort of things in this group. That's kind of what we were originally thinking, I think. Correct, Molly?
Yeah, we started from kind of, the same way you build your RPG group team,
Yeah,
with their specialized skills, and then
yeah,
added in what we thought would be interesting relationships to have amongst them, and thinking about how those relationships would change over the course of
yep,
their time working together.
yep,
Yeah, we wanted Linda Way to kind of be this like mysterious, almost godlike figure that also gets like put on a pedestal whether she wants to or not.
yep, yep. And somebody who chooses to be a leader and is chosen to be a leader, and sometimes the line blurs which one's which, right?
Gotcha. So why Tavius is Tundle the best?
Uh, because Tundle is the best because he took it the weirdest way possible, right? Like everybody else is dealing with very realistic personal experiences that make them develop as characters. And he just thought he was right and just went for it entirely.
Gotcha.
Yeah, everybody else is like struggling with, personal repercussions, and he just doesn't have those ties.
Yeah, he's go big or go home.
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
I suppose next on our notes here, I have Dusk Tech's elevator pitch. It sounds like Molly obviously clarified that they were going up in rockets to start with. So Dusk Tech, being one of these corpo governments, were they just already in control in that area and got, hit the lottery because the Dusk landed above them, or did they have the most resources at the time to relocate and kind of build Machafuko? I guess how did Dusk Tech end up in charge, and why were they able to get this elevator constructed? I suppose is the question here. That could be directed at anyone, I suppose, who has the best grasp on it.
Yeah, Tavius, do you want to take this
Sure,
one?
sure. Yeah, so there was a green recovery corporation in this area in Africa that is one of the central powers that became Dustech. There were many corporations before. This, because of the fortune of it and the sort of great power that Africa had become at this point in history, they were able to coalesce the corporations and talk them into forming into Dustech. And then they discovered how to get what they needed out of the ship to then build the elevator to make it the fastest and cheapest way at that time to, get resources as quickly as possible and really actually help rebuild the world. I mean, they're doing great things around the world. People have water and energy and homes and power and all of these things, again, because of the great things that Dustech's actually doing in the world, right? Like, much of the world was very post-apocalyptic, and in the past 15 years, they've reshaped it to have actually energy and power, which is not a consistent way of life for all of the world pre this, right? Even if the corporations had good cities functioning, they were very much just isolated in their own power issues, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we wanted to try to build a world where, again, we have this two faction people who are like pro Dust Tech or anti Dust Tech, but the pro Dust Tech is doing good work out there.
Absolutely.
They are helping in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And yeah, as far as the question too about Machafuko, we wanted we want to make it this like kind of gold rush city that pops up overnight. And Sim, I think you did some research on like comparable cities like that. I don't know if you remember any. Totally fine if you don't, but
Yeah, what I did is look at the fastest growing populations in the world, and I think it was Dubai. Places that started out as like fishing towns with tens of thousands of people, and for whatever reason, like oil or something like that, they grow into a city of millions. And there's already a pretty decent population in the area. I mean, the DRC is not a small country. They have the Kinshasa, the capital of DRC, is the second largest city in Africa, and there's still, it's not like where Machafuko was built was like completely devoid of life. So. But even then, even if you factor that in, Machafuko is a very fast-growing metropolis, and its name means chaos in Swahili, so it reflects that. So,
awesome, good notes there.
It was like a joke name that went too far.
It's fitting now, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the elevator itself, Sim, you spoke this morning about some of the research that you did for something like, a space elevator. Obviously, it's a pretty complex structure that doesn't actually exist on Earth yet, but you were saying that it is at least feasible in many ways.
Yeah, so this is actually a really old idea. I think it goes, I feel bad that I forget his name, but it was a Russian physicist, I believe, who came up with the idea. It's just this old idea of, hey, instead of making a giant bomb that you ride on, with that just like explodes slowly. We call that a rocket. Instead of building a rocket, which is limited by the rocket equation, you have this problem of you have to propel your fuel with your payload. So one of the potentially most elegant ways to get into space is just build a really tall structure. Build a really tall tower or a really long like cable for an elevator. It's a great idea, but until recently, we didn't think there was anything in the universe strong enough to serve as a cable, because it would, in order to get to geostationary orbit, it has to be 36,000 kilometers long, not including the counterweight that has to keep it tight. So the weight of the tether itself would be so great it just snaps right after a certain point. But in recent years, thanks to advances in nanotechnology, with usually like what they call carbon allotropes, different configurations of carbon molecules, that it's kind of like diamond or graphite. They realized they could potentially make something like called carbon nanotubes or graphene, and these materials are like estimated to be like 200 times stronger than steel. So imagine like a one molecule thick that could like hold the weight of an elephant. So this is potentially the strongest material possible that we can conceive of. The power now, we can just make a 36,000 mile long kilometer out of it. We can. I think South Korea holds the record for making like a sheet of graphene that's a meter long, and I think it takes like 2 hours to do it or something like that. I think I did the math trying to figure out how long it would take to build it, and it would be like decades just to make one cable. And but technology.
That's why we have Duskite.
Yeah, well, but keep in mind,
we have a super ship from no one knows where.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is, though, that's current technology. I mean, by 2050 or late 21st century, there could be breakthroughs in manufacturing graphene in arbitrary lengths very efficiently. We don't know. We just haven't gotten that far technologically. If we can do that, basically you launch a big, kind of like a big ball of yarn, only graphene, up into geostationary orbit, and unwind the tether and lower the tether down to the Earth and anchor it. And then you extend a counterweight in the other direction. In our case, the counterweight is the dust, this giant ship. So that's very convenient for that purpose. Otherwise, we could use a space station or a large asteroid, just something equally massive going in the other direction. That acts as a counterweight, so the Earth is spinning. So it's like if you take a ball on the end of a string and spin it around your head, the centrifugal force will pull it tight. So it's like a big ball swinging around the Earth. Then now you can send an elevator car up and down it at like with orders of magnitude less cost. I think it's like 100 times cheaper potentially if we could build something like this. That to send a payload into orbit than sending a giant rocket that has 1 in 100 chance of exploding. So. Yeah, I mean, it's something we may see if you're young enough. I don't know if I'll live to see it, but it's something some of us may see in our lifetimes. It is a real physical possibility. There's nothing in the laws of physics that we know of yet that says it's completely impossible.
All right.
I'm going to live forever, so I'll see it.
Excellent. Also a good perspective to have. You only live once, but you live forever. So it's
absolutely. It's perfectly fine.
So now that we've got a great frame of reference on where Earth was, where Earth is now with the dusk above it, and the first Alpha team that went aboard, let's fast forward just a little bit to where Twilight Shift kind of takes place, which is we've got 10,000 breakers, we've got the Red Warrens that we've now explored at least a little bit of. We have this functioning space elevator that is, bringing these materials back to Earth. Let's, I guess, get the audience sort of caught up on what are we doing? Like what is happening now up in the dusk? with our 10,000 breakers, the Dusk Tech are they controlling every aspect of these breakers' lives? Are they just sending them on missions because they can? They have the ability to gather these materials. What's the ongoing purpose now that we've got all this established?
Yeah, great question. And also, since Dave isn't here, I'll give the caveat that all of some of this lore like might shift. Some of it is still in ideation mode, but this is just kind of where we're currently all thinking at. So yeah, so where we are now in the timeline is, yeah, Dust Tech is collecting those sweet, sweet resources, and they have the whole product line going. They're just like turning those exo gems right out into toasters, into water filtration systems, sending it across the world. Uh, and yeah, and one of the important power sources are these four-dimensional crystals that we're calling exogems that they get from the dusk. And in the first zone of the dusk, which is, we can think of it kind of like the outer layer of the ship, of like where you first enter, it's this rocky kind of terrain known as Zone 1, and that is the main home for the Gribbles. And there's an area within Zone 1, because Zone 1 itself is huge. Sim could tell you in the chat exactly how big it is, probably, not to put you on the spot, but
I don't have my notes. I did do the math, but I don't have my notes on me right now.
I know you did. I know you did.
it's
Yeah.
somewhere. We knew you did it. Um,
I have read it before.
yes. And so it's a area within this one zone where these red exogems that are called vologems because they're particularly volatile are abundant. They're everywhere. And as we know from the hatchening, Gribbles use the vologems in Adnite, which is a kind of golden exogem, they just naturally use those two resources to hatch their eggs. But Dust Tech, uses those resources as like power source for a lot of what they're developing. And so even though the Red Warrens is dark and mysterious and people seem to disappear there a lot and may have some dangers that we don't know about yet, they are, well, in Twilight Shift 2, it's closed for those reasons. But it may not be closed forever. We'll see.
We'll see. We'll see what happens in that
area.
That Red Warren quarantine zones. Pretty interesting. That's what I think.
So we did.
We should find out at some point what happens more there.
Maybe it could be interesting for players or holders to discover.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Gribbles, for sure, we've learned a bit of their anatomy over time, and from A, blasting them, and B, hatching them, seeing all the traits and things. But Gribbles took a lot of research to figure out things like patterns. Sim, you mentioned earlier in the first session about your interest in hive insects and things like that. Do you want to talk about a little of the Gribble research and development that went into them?
Yeah, I feel like I know more about gribble biology than the vast majority of animal species that actually exist. And I studied biology in school. So yeah, we did a lot, man. We really fleshed these creatures out. I love learning about use. The term is eusocial. What you hear a lot in like science fiction is hive mind or a hive creature or something like that. Only bees have hive. The technical term us biology nerds use is eusociality or eusocial, and that just means truly social, like really social. And these are species usually that have like a caste structure, which means they have like a queen. Like they have what are called reproductives. All they do is reproduce. They're not the leaders. They're not like it's not like a monarch or a patriarch. They're like the reproductive system of the colony. And then oftentimes you have like soldiers and workers and stuff like that, or nurses and different caste structures. And so when trying to work out the gribbles, one of the things I wanted to avoid is a lot of myths about how um, like a species like this would work. Like, for example, there can be more than one queen in a lot of species. Like, it's kind of like this trope in science fiction that there's this like singular queen controlling the entire species, and the workers are just like mindless drone puppets. And that's not at all how it is. Like, individual worker ants have personalities. Some can be lazy, some can be like really active, some can be kind of like irritable. They have like so they're not like mindless drones, and the hierarchy with queens can actually be pretty complicated, where you have like primary, secondary, tertiary. Like queens fighting battles with each other, like squabbling with each other over control over a colony. It's really complex. And so I can't really condense all of it down into this. There is a web page. If you go to the DuskBreakers website and you go to the identifiables page, you can read about their anatomy, their physiology, how they breed, their social structure. All that's all kind of worked out.
Yeah, and I dropped a link there in chat as well. So just know that many hours went into actually studying, lots of biology for the Gribbles. They weren't just like ladybugs with skins, all the traits and stuff really do match Earth counterparts, which I think is pretty awesome. Great job, obviously, to the team for getting those complete. I think we're in the last maybe 15 minutes here. Delu, if you've got any further questions for the writing team, you're obviously welcome to drop them in the chat here. Anyone else? Solomon, I see, Ken Chen, a couple others. Obviously, while we have the floor here, please do leave any questions. But this morning we actually asked the team some of their favorite things that they've gotten to work on here and favorite parts of working at Metatheory. So Tavius, we'll start with you with that question. You've been here since before I have, so working at Metatheory on DuskBreakers for all this time, what are some of your favorite parts of the job, and perhaps even a narrative point that sticks out to you that you enjoy?
One of the things that I really really love is like tying things together, right? Like we have so many people doing such great creative work here and having so many ideas, and I really like seeing where the ideas tie from, like something that comes out of product or comes out of your guys' side on community and such, or Sim with his beautiful like research and we'll just come up with something. And I can even spoil here a little. Is there's a martial arts system that we'll have that is true to Breakers and Machafuko that will be, that Sim created that I was able to tie into other things and other characters like Lakono, and it's just I really love tying all the stuff together and being able to get a good narrative point and angle out of it. So I mean, I really, really have truly loved doing that for the past year and half, almost 2 years, I guess. Yeah.
Excellent. Is there any specific narrative point or character that you put a lot of work into and are proud of?
I mean, so the Alpha team are dear babies to me. Molly and I have different ones of them that we do harder work on. So we've kind of split up the team in ways, and then there's some we work on together. But like, I love the Alpha team. I really want to be able to tell their story in detail and the repercussions of the actions of those olden days.
Sounds good. I can't wait to learn more about them. I think just this morning I was learning to spell Makono and Moyo properly.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Excited to see.
They're going to be wonderful, and we'll get to find out what Dustek's been up to and all the fun things of the quarantine zone and Red Wards. It's fun. Yeah, it'll be great.
Excellent. And Sim, this morning, again, we are lucky to have you for both sessions here. Do you want to just let everyone know, your favorite part of actually working on DuskBreakers throughout the past year here?
This is going to be a shock, but it's the world building. So, and working with Molly, Tavius, Peter to that end has been amazing. I mean, it's how I got the job. Really, is I originally wanted to be a scientist, and I got obsessed with like science fiction world building, and wanted to eventually do that as a career. And I've spent like the last decade of my life, at least, like really learning how science fiction worlds get built, how to research like the science, looking into hard science. And so now when I got to this job, I basically was able to employ all that everything I'd learned in really cool ways, because taking like cool, like basically almost magical concepts or fantastical concepts, like like a magic crystal, right? Like, how do you make that? It's kind of a cliche, right? Like, it seems like you got dilithium crystals, the crystal, and the kyber crystal. There's always crystals. And I wanted to like try to imagine, like, well, what would a really exotic, like strange substance, crystalline substance, like how far can I push this? But and do some actual research on it. So I started digging into four-dimensional space. And I was able to take everything I learned about how there could be higher dimensions, like a fourth or fifth dimension, and like actually integrate that as an explanation for why this substance is so special. So it's really taking these like outlandish sci-fi ideas and trying to ground them and like flesh them out, and then integrate that into the world building. And it's sort of this feedback loop. So it will, like, Tavius will have these really cool ideas that he'll build off that, and then I'll go back and repeat that process, and we just kind of feedback on each other. Same with Molly, like when we're working on creatures, like bounce ideas off each other. So he'll throw something out like, "Oh, what about a biological helicopter?" Like, "Oh, I'll go explore that idea and see if I could figure it out." So that's been incredibly fun. And as far as narrative, I think the stuff with Gribbles and Adrian, and I think I'm biased because he's like an exobiologist, and I've always I really, really hope we discover alien life someday, and exobiology becomes something that involves like something you can actually study in front of you instead of just speculating.
Right.
So and I got to write out like basically his research papers, like what like his process in researching Gribbles, and that was really, really fun.
Yeah, so overall, you get to put yourself in the shoes of a sci-fi scientist, and actually do experiments, against our knowledge base. Sounds pretty awesome, just as a job overall. So I can see why that'd be a lot of fun. And Molly, you've been here the whole time as well, working on DuskBreakers from the beginning. So what are some of your favorite highlights from...
Molly predates me by a month and a half.
Yeah.
Molly's the senior.
And now we will watch a video on my timeline. Secretary, also voiced by Rand Skavorski.
Well,
Yeah, no, I'm going to switch up my answer from this morning a little bit. I think what's been fun and like trying to figure out the stories, trying to figure out what narratives we want to tell in this world while building the world, is getting the opportunity to play around in a bunch of different genres. And I love genres. I come from a background where I love to take genre tropes of like comedy, horror, fantasy, and see how I could twist those tropes. And so yeah, it's cool getting to like work in a world where we can have more like horror-based stories or comedic-based stories, along with like the sci-fi and action of it all. Yeah, so I'm excited for the future when we get to release more of those stories that we've been working on.
Yeah, we've got a fresh canvas and lots of good collaborators. And in the first session, if you go check the video on YouTube later on, we talked a bit more about AI in that session, and now we have like additional writing power from technology. So basically, we're just getting started. I mean, obviously, gameplay and the lore and story surrounding it. We've got some stuff on the website. We've linked throughout the show here. We've got webcomic #1 sort of pilot edition, right? But there's still so many stories and bits of science and creatures to discover, and obviously the Dusk we've only barely set foot in. So I'm excited, and I hope that everyone else watching is excited for the near future and beyond, where we get just more and more cool stuff from all of you on the writing team. Is there anything before we close out, any significant chunks of story that you think we should touch on before we head off? Any gaps in our story, perhaps?
No, I think we pretty much hit on all of it.
Great. Yeah, and again, David was here for the first session. He had the caveat that our story is still fluid and still being written and still being collaborated upon. So definitely feedback from the community is also welcome. Ask Adrian is a channel here, Story World Chat, AMA Chat. Make use of those. If something does pique your interest, or there's a mystery that you want to, be solved, and we have the writers always paying attention. Go ahead.
Totally, we do check those chats. So yeah, please feel free to reach out and start a conversation with us in those. And our goal with creating this world is to, not only tell our own stories, but get to a place where then we can more collaboratively, tell stories with our audience as well. So we're excited for that.
Cool. All right. I suppose that's it from us here on the writing team. Thanks once again to all the holders and Meta Theory staff who came to listen in. We'll have more AMA events, likely at least one more before April is up. But these were our first two with the lore team, and they did a great job. Thank you so much to Sim, Tavius, and Molly for joining us here in the second session, as well as Peter and David in the first session. I did record both of them, and they'll both be up on youtube.com/DuskBreakers if you missed any portion of those. And just stay in touch here on Discord. We're always able to read and respond to any feedback and, criticism, suggestions, everything. So thanks again. Have a wonderful day or night until we see you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.